Shall we start now?
Yes, Farah, I think you can start now because we have all the speakers around and participants are also joining. So I think we are good to start. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon to everyone. There may be people who are joining from other time zones. So we are today we are launching this South Asia Virtual Conference on Prevention of Early and Forced Marriages 2020. So this conference was initially planned to be a face-to-face conference. However, due to COVID, this was not feasible. Therefore, it was decided to break it into various sessions and conduct this conference virtually. So today is the first session. Please, next. We have 3 speakers today, but let me first introduce you Shirakat and Men Engage Alliance. Shirakat Partnership for Development is a non-governmental organization working on human rights and women's rights in Pakistan. The organization is governed by a board of directors, including development professionals, gender and human rights activists, and behavioral change communication specialists. The board is responsible for policy guidance, management, and review of performance of the organization. It also hosts the National Secretariat for Men Engage Alliance, Pakistan. About Men Engage Alliance South Asia, Men Engage Alliance South Asia has countries. It's a network of different organizations. There are 5 countries in this network: Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. And about 200, this has about 200 organizational members in the region and approximately 100 individual members. Afghanistan and Maldives are in the process of developing their country networks, and they will join the South Asia Alliance in future. Men Engage Alliance members work collectively and individually towards advancing gender justice, human rights, and social justice to achieve. This is now not very clear. Somehow this has gone. This presentation has gone blurred. I don't know what has happened. Probably the network. But anyway.
Yes, yes, it's the network.
So anyway, through its country level and at regional level, the alliance seeks to provide a collective voice on the need to engage men and boys in gender equality, to build and improve the field of practice around engaging men in achieving gender justice and advocating before policymakers at local, national, and regional and international levels to further the gender equality cause. Next, please. Next, Bushra.
Farah, move the slide. You can't see the next slide?
No, now I'm seeing the next slide, but at that time I wasn't. The conference builds on the current campaign delivered by Men Engage Alliance South Asia, where the capacity of country network is being enhanced on implementing sexual reproductive health and rights initiatives with men and masculinities lens and developing capacities of youth change makers for policy advocacy and community awareness. South Asian region actually had decided to work on early enforced marriages, early child enforced marriages, as the issue is very common in all member countries. This conference will gather evidence around CEFM during COVID-19 and will help member countries use the evidence to chalk out future strategies. Next, please.
Bushra, next.
So basically, most of you would already be aware, because many of you have been working in this field of gender-based violence and CEFM. It's a violation of human rights when girls marry young, and actually because it affects more girls than the boys. So that is why this emphasis on young girls. They often drop out of school, they experience poor health, and less economically and agriculturally productive, thus detracting from any social development and gender equality efforts. Additionally, poverty, food insecurity, conflict and crisis, cultural traditions, and low value of girls often drive CEFM. And actually, it continues to reinforce the circle of poverty. And past experience suggests that rate of CEFM surge in situations of crisis, such as disaster, conflict, and pandemics. Similarly, incidence of COVID-19 is likely to increase number of early enforced marriages. According to an estimate, coronavirus could put an extra 4 million girls at risk of early enforced marriages. The organizing committee of this conference includes Ms. Khadija Khan from Pakistan Alliance for Early Childhood, Dr. Naeem Zafar from Pehchan, Mr. Rashid Mahmood Khan, Visionary Foundation, Pakistan, Mr. Ali Salman from Rosen, Mr. Ataul Haq from Youth Association for Development, and Ms. Bilkis Tahira from Shirakat Partnership for Development. This would be the format of the conference. So we start today, and then in the next, up to the 12th of October, there will be another 5 sessions where there will be different talk shows that will be run on virtually. And there will be webinar again at the end of the end of this whole conference, which will look at the strategies to curtailing CEFM during and post-humanitarian crisis. So I hand over to Bushra to show us the promo of TV talk shows.
एक अंदाजे के मुताबिक हर साल 1 करोड़ 40 लाख लड़कियों की 18वीं सालगिरह से कबल ही उनकी जबरी शादी कर दी जाती है, जिसकी वजह से उनका बचपन गैर मुतवक्के तौर पर ख़त्म हो जाता है। कम उम्र में जबरी शादी की वजह गुर्बत, समाजी नाइंसाफ़ी, सिनफी अदम मसावात और वो सोच है कि अगर लड़की उम्र में छोटी होगी तो उसे अपने रंग में ढालना आसान होगा। दिन ब दिन मुख्तलिफ बहरानों और मुआशी तंगी की वजह से इसमें इजाफा होता जा रहा है। यूनिसेफ और UN विमेन के मुताबिक कोविड-19 के बहरान में 40 लाख लड़कियों की कम उम्र में जबरी शादी का खतरा है। हम न्यूज़ गैर सरकारी तंजीम शिराकत पार्टनरशिप फॉर डेवलपमेंट के ताउन से इस मुआशरती मसले को अपने प्रोग्राम्स के जरिए उजागर कर रहा है। सोच को तब्दील करें बेहतर जिंदगी के लिए, एक बेहतर मुआशरे के लिए।
देखिए खुसूसी प्रोग्राम्स का सिलसिला सुबह से आगे में हफ्ता इतवार सुबह 10:30 पर सिर्फ हम न्यूज़ पर।
हम न्यूज़, आगे की सोच।
Thank you, Salma, for sharing that. Farah ji, there's another promo that I'll be sharing.
Okay.
And then we can move on. Just give me 1 minute to start sharing my screen.
अपने हुकूक से महरूम और मुआशरे के पिसे हुए तबकात के लिए आवाज़ उठाना हमारी, आपकी, हम सब की जिम्मेदारी है। गैर सरकारी तंजीम शराकत पार्टनरशिप फॉर डेवलपमेंट के ताउन से हम न्यूज़ ये जिम्मेदारी पूरी कर रहा है।
ये जो कम उम्री की शादियां हैं, इनकी वजूहात हैं क्या?
तालीम की कमी है और फिर गुर्बत है।
इस वक्त पाकिस्तान जो है वो दुनिया में जो चाइल्ड ब्राइड्स हैं उसमें 6 नंबर पे आता है।
कोविड के दौरान हमने देखा है कि क्या ट्रेंड्स में इजाफा हुआ है कम उम्री की शादी का।
माली वसाइल है वो कम हो गए, नौकरियां नहीं रही, कारोबार नहीं रहे, बच्चियों की शादियां कर दो तो शायद कोई बोझ कम हो जाएगा।
2.5 लाख बच्चियों की शादियां 15 साल से पहले हो रही हैं। हमें ये बताना पड़ेगा लोगों को कि कम उम्र की शादियों के क्या नुकसानात हैं।
एक ख़ास उम्र से पहले शादी अगर कर दी जाए लड़के की भी या लड़के की लड़की की, तो उससे कई तरह के मसाइल जन्म लेते हैं।
37 लाख प्रेगनेंसीज हर साल ऐसी होती है जो अनवांटेड होती है।
जब हम कवानीन की बात करते हैं तो वो भी बनते हुए नजर नहीं आते।
हमारी असेंबली में जब ये बिल पेश हुआ, ये जितनी भी पार्टी से कहते जी बड़े वुमेन फ्रेंडली कोई था, सब भाग गए वहाँ से।
जब तक जहन नहीं बदलेंगे, रवैये नहीं बदलेंगे, नहीं हो सकता।
देखिए खुसूसी प्रोग्राम्स का।
Thank you, Farah. That was it from my side.
Yes. So do we go back to the...
Yes.
Yeah, just a few seconds before Farah take over the dais. Just a little sort of, the backstopping what Farah has already said. These 4 TV programs will be aired as mentioned in the earlier slide. They will be shared and aired from tomorrow, from the morning show at from 10:30 to 11 a.m. and then the following day on Sunday there will be another TV talk show that will be aired on the same time, and the next series 2 program will be aired on next weekend. So please stay tuned and do watch the program. They have been very, very helpful, and they have been produced untiringly with the support of Hum TV and the team of Shirakat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shazia. Yes, Bushra. So this is basically the agenda, and we are hoping that we will be able to conclude by 6 p.m. Pakistan time. So this is right now the introduction and briefing on South Asian Conference on Prevention of Early and Forced Marriages. This is what is going on now, and promos have been shared. And this is, now we will have, after this, we'll have presentation from Archana Dwivedi, Director, Nirantar Resource Center for Gender and Education, India. Following that, I will present very briefly some situation of COVID-19 in Pakistan and what is the evidence or no evidence of child marriages right now, of increasing or not increasing. Overview and perspective of youth on CEFM from Sri Lanka. Mr. Senel Wanniarachchi will present. He is the co-founder and director of Hashtage Generation Sri Lanka. Then there will be question answers for half an hour, and we'll share an animation on GPV, and then closing remarks and conclusion will be done by the Executive Director of Shirakat, Ms. Bilkis Tahira. Yes, Bushra. So let me introduce Ms. Archana Dwivedi, Director Nirantar. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Director Nirantar Resource Center for Gender Education, India. Ms. Archana is a researcher and development practitioner with over 18 years of experience in the technical areas of research, training, and advocacy. She has engaged on the issue of women empowerment, girls' education, young people's empowerment from a feminist lens. She has coordinated the study landscape analysis of early and child marriages in India that have mapped the root causes and impact of early and child marriages from the perspective of gender and sexuality. Ms. Archana is an advocate of creating feminist knowledge by way of critical engagement with issues through research. Her engagement on the issue of gender, sexuality, and education are further strengthened by the work at the field level with women and girls belonging to marginalized communities. Welcome, Ms. Archana. Next, please. Or we give the floor to Ms. Archana, and then when we come to the next speaker, I can introduce. So floor is yours, Ms. Archana.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Farah, and it's great to be part of this webinar. I will just, yeah, so is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
Hello? Okay,
yes.
Okay. So, like Raja shared, I am Archana from Nirantar, and Nirantar is a non-profit organization in India, and we work for women's empowerment through feminist educational pedagogies and content creation. So today I will be sharing about our mapping that we did to understand early and child marriage. Actually, when we were doing this mapping, we didn't call it forced marriage, but as we progressed and we started working, we realized that there is an international discourse also where forced marriage is also looked at in a way, and this becomes particularly important in context of LGBTQI community, where marriage comes in a very different way than what other people might experience. So I hope when I'm sharing the experiences and findings of the study, we will keep this larger set of people in view, which means young people, but also people from marginalized community and people who themselves are marginalized because of their gender and sexuality preferences. So like Ms. Farah just said, one is that we always thought that early marriages or child marriages happen because traditionally this is how people thought it's the right thing for girls to do, or even for boys to get married at the right age. But what we have understood that it is actually a dynamic issue, and it is something which keeps changing its shape as the time progresses. So we have newer ways in which now early and child marriage is being practiced, because and it is dynamic because it is a structural problem. It is not just a practice that happens because of poverty. It is actually a way our society is organized, and it is the way women and girls are seen and how their life or their roles and responsibilities are being understood or established in the society. So, and that is why we see very often that whenever there is a crisis situation, it kind of re-emerges in a different way. We also understood through our mapping that all early marriages are not forced marriages, and I think we need to be aware of this particular reality, and I will talk more when we discuss it further. Mm, and something which is very very central to our understanding of early marriage is marriages happen early because marriage is the only way of life. Especially in the South Asian context, I can say confidently that it is the centrality of marriage that makes marriage such a mandatory thing. So it doesn't matter to people, what age girls or boys are getting married. It is important to recognize that boys are also involved in it. Maybe girls are more impacted negatively, but it is not to say that they are not impacted. And of course, the way sex and marriage are intertwined, and how we it is something that is there but nobody says. And that is, I think, is the driving force why marriages are so central to our society, because that's the only way our sex life is also organized. And I think when all of this comes together, then we will be able to understand early marriage in a more comprehensive way. um, so if I so what we did in the mapping is to really understand that what are the structural root causes of early marriage, where we did not look at factors like poverty just as lack of resources or money with people, but try to look at the economic factors that affect people's decision of marriage. So when we say economic factors and not just talk about poverty, then we are also able to see that even if families have enough money, they are not struggling with poverty, and yet they decide to invest in the marriage of their daughters and invest in the education of their sons. And that is how economic factors become important, not just the poverty. Likewise, when we look at the marriage as an institution, women's labor is a very important aspect of that. So marriages don't just happen because girls and boys have to get married, and reproduction and the way different things happen around marriage, but it is an important aspect of bringing unpaid women's labor into the family, and women replacing each other's unpaid labor. So when there is the woman of the house is not well, then you get married and bring another woman in the house to take care of. So this exchange of women's labor as part of marriage, and this is the unpaid economic labor that is part of the marriage transactions, and early marriage is very much rooted in it. This is particularly important in societies where agriculture is a dominant economic activity. You definitely need women to contribute in those things, and we saw that most of the rural areas where agriculture was a dominant activity, early marriages were more rampant and more accepted, because that is how the society was organized around the labor. Secondly, like we all are saying, economic crisis makes it more makes girls more vulnerable. So whether it is in the times of riots or natural disaster or even now COVID-19, whenever there is an economic crisis leading to economic uncertainty, you want to make sure something which is very very stress giving to the family. And a young girl unprotected, not being able to not being married is a huge stress on the family. So you actually mitigate your economic uncertainty by doing something which is doable, like getting rid of this pressure or this boj that girls are supposed to be or considered by the family. And even when people receive rehabilitation packages as part of natural disaster, or even when we were in touch with a lot of girls during COVID-19, and girls shared that more girls are getting married early and early, because it is a good time for parents to get them married without actually spending too much on the marriage ceremonies, because there was a limit on how many people could be called in the marriage, and that itself became a reason for parents to get their daughters married without spending too much. So this is actually very closely linked to the economic uncertainty. We also saw that a lot of families who work at bricklain sites, etc., where your wages are not certain, but when or even in agriculture communities where you do not know, this year you had good crop, maybe next year you do not know what will happen. Whenever there is a money with family, they want to do this as an important aspect of their responsibility, which is to be done with. So this, I think, here why I'm explaining it more is also to not just see poverty as a reason, but really look at the economic factors and uncertainty as part of this economic arrangement of marriage, because marriage itself is an economic arrangement, and how families consolidate their economic strengths by way of getting married. And so does poor communities struggling with uncertainties of wages also find marriage as a way of mitigating their uncertainties and the risk that they are always undergoing because of the lack of economic security. Um, I don't have to really talk a lot about sexuality as a very, very important aspect of this practice, because chastity, virginity, these are the most important things to be assured for any girl to get married. And earlier you get it done, earlier you get rid of the pressure of keeping this sacrosanct practice. So I think a lot of us are already identifying this as a huge thing that plays a part in parents decision making when they decide to get their daughters married. uh, However, it is important to say that this decision is not just based on the fear that something will happen to their daughters. This decision is also based on fear that their daughters might decide something, or might fall in love, or they might actually go for the relationships that they want, and that is not something which is approved by the societies as we live. So this maintenance of purity is not just based on the fear of external um, uh, uh, external attacks on girls, but parents own anxiety whether girls will continue to be as they want them to be, or they themselves should not violate any sexuality norms. I mean, that is the bigger pressure on parents. Why even now girls are getting married early, despite all the education and everything, despite all parents knowing that getting them early married is not good, and yet they want to do it because this plays a very important role in their decision making. um, we also came across a lot of cases where, and this particularly happens in cases of marginalized communities, where parents feel their daughters are vulnerable to the powerful communities, and they will not be able to save them. They get them married to protect them from the onslaught of the powerful communities. Sometimes even violence happening within the homes can also become a reason for parents to get them married. Like I remember we also came across some cases where girls were getting abused within their homes by their own relatives, and since women, especially mothers, can't raise voice against it, so for them it was a safe way to just send her away in marriage. So this violence within the home we don't recognize. We only see that girls are getting violence from outside, but a natal house violence is something that we neither recognize nor address with that much intensity as we look at the marital home violence. um, like I said earlier, also inevitability of marriage is an important aspect of this entire thing. And since marriage is the only way, whenever there is a good match available, just get them married. Marriage has to happen. How does it matter whether it is 17 or 19? So age actually is just a number. For community, it doesn't matter. For us, somehow 18 is a magic number. We think girls are ready, but for community it doesn't really matter. So a lot of our messaging also doesn't really work with communities, because from where we come and how they understand, these are very different things. Of course, all communities have their way of looking at marriage. What are the marriage norms, caste, class, religion, all of this, and parents want to ensure that girls don't break those norms, and even boys can't break those norms. It's not just girls. So marriages also happen early to make sure that the marriage norms are not being broken and the social structure is made intact as it is. Masculinity is an important aspect of early marriages, where masculinity of girl's father is at the stake. If girl decide to marry on her own will, it is a huge dent on father's masculinity. If boys also decide they want to do something that parents are not approving, even boys father feel that it is their honor to arrange marriage for their own boys. So here the masculinity plays an important part, and boys most masculinity is definitely compromised or being subdued by the father's masculinity. At the same time, we also need to look at boys as the victims as well in this entire thing. All of us know girls are being more impacted, but boys are also victims of this early marriage practice, and we have to look at them not just as somebody who's going to help change this practice or help girls, but actually help themselves. So boys are not masiha, they themselves are victims, and they need to get out of it themselves, to change these things. So I won't go into the details of impact of early marriage, because this is something which all of us understand, that it creates skewed power dynamics. Girls getting early married are much more vulnerable to violence within the marital home. They don't have voice, they don't have say. Health is a huge thing. Maternal mortality increases, education is restricted, and of course they are not able to build their skills or knowledge for being employed or become economically gainful. So it is actually a layering of all of this together. So it's not like one of the things happen, but actually everything layers upon each other, and that is why this becomes a um, uh, much more powerless. Girls are in a much more powerless situation, because all of this playing at the same time on them. Um, as part of our intervention, should I continue? How much time do I have? Am I doing
Yeah,
okay with the
Archana,
time?
yeah, Archana, can you please like
You can
wind
take,
up?
Archana, you can take 5 minutes more.
Okay, okay.
So,
I think I
yeah.
just have 2 more slides to go.
Okay.
So, um, I think as part of our PAPIC study only, we also try to understand that what were the interventions happening at that point of time and what are the kind of gaps that we see because India has act against early and child marriage for the last 20-25 years, and yet we are struggling with this issue. So really needed to understand how these interventions are happening and what is not working. So some of the important things that we understood is that a lot of time we see early marriage not as something which is structural in nature. We think that it is just the mindset of people, and if we tell them that, oh, it has health hazards and it has implications on the girls, this thing community will understand and will start doing. And that is where the big gap was, that when we spoke with women and men, they all knew what we were telling them. Because I think the media and there's so much communication that has happened, they all knew that health hazards hai, and girls should not get married, and yet they were getting them married. And their argument was, so how does it matter? We also got married early and we are fine and we are doing okay, so what is wrong? So I think there is a huge gap in the messaging as the development sector takes it to the community and how community looks at this issue. So unless we are seeing this as integrated or as structural as gender issues in the communities, are we will never be able to work on the early marriage just as a practice. So I think community also needs to community will not understand it. The structural norms need to change for early and child marriage to stop. Secondly, we also saw that a lot of interventions actually looked at 18 as the only age. So whatever was happening, you just delay it till 18 years, and after 18 years, you're on your own. So after 18, whatever happens is fine. For us, this was a big question. How does it matter whether I'm entering the same oppressive institution of marriage at 17 or at 18 or at 19? So somewhere I think we were not looking at the institution of marriage and just stuck about this number of 18. So how do we actually start thinking beyond these numbers and look at the larger structures in which girls were operating? And which also meant, what are the desires of young people? Are young people also wanting what we as development practitioners telling them? Sometimes they themselves wanted to get married at 17, 16, and the whole NGO was so upset with those girls who were part of the community groups, that how can you think of marrying at 17? So I think we are not looking at how young people are looking at their lives, because we also have a certain kind of discourse in which we think that these are the parameters, and if these parameters are being obeyed, then it is development or then it is progressive. Otherwise, it is not. We also realized that actually a lot of focus on girls has undermined the whole issue of masculinity and boys and what is happening to them. Nobody is listening to them, nobody is working with them, and even when there are interventions with boys, they are mostly with an intention that boys will help in changing the or helping girls to not get married. So I think there is a gap, that unless boys are able to understand masculinity from the gender perspective and understand that they themselves are part of it, they are not rescuing anybody but themselves. We will never be able to change the structural norms and how gender actually works in context of early and child marriage, and even the masculinities of fathers. how do we even acknowledge them? Do we even talk to fathers and understand it from their masculinity point of view and not just the poverty point of view? So I think these are some sort of gaps that we thought were important to discuss if we want a structural change towards the early and child marriage. So I guess this is so, and just a last one thing, and I guess a lot of people who are listening to me are themselves part of the development world, and we know that there is a huge invisibilization of married girls who are actually early married, and they actually fall off our radar. One, because it is very, very difficult to access newlywed girls, and until they are 30 years, they don't come out of their houses. So we actually are not able to track this very, very important constituency. And secondly, I think we are also much more focused in delaying marriages rather than actually helping and working with the girls who got married and not part of the system anymore. So I would stop my sharing here. I have one more slide of recommendation, but I think I can get back to it once we have, continue with the discussion and come back to it. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Archana. It was very useful, and the recommendations, definitely, we will come back to these when we have question, answers, and discussion.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, next is my my presentation, and let me introduce myself. I'm currently working as Country Director, Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, but I have over 30 years of experience working in the women's movement, on women's rights, research on women's issues, and basically have been part of various initiatives on gender-based violence in the normal circumstances as well as in the conflict situation. I have basically throughout my life, I have worked on girls' education, disaster risk reduction, gender-based violence and girls' rights, sexual and reproductive health. So this is and women with disabilities. So this is my brief introduction. I will go on to my presentation, and Bushra, I can share my screen, and if you stop, okay, share screen. I will find my presentation. Just a minute. Where did it go? Bushra, if you can share my presentation, that would be better.
Yes,
because, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bushra. So I will briefly talk about child early and forced marriages and COVID-19, and basically the situation. You all are aware that about 21% of girls in Pakistan are married before the age of 18th birthday, and 3% are married before the age of 15. So Pakistan is actually amongst the 6th highest number of absolute child brides. UNICEF actually says that. The median age of marriage is lowest in Gilgit-Baltistan region, which means that, this is an area that needs a lot of work. CEFM is justified in the society based on customary practices that we have, on the basis of religion, on the basis of gender norms, low level of education, protection issues, and shifting the burden of poverty, as has already been described by Ms. Archana. Ending child marriage in Pakistan could increase earning and productivity by $6,229 million. So this was a report by World Bank in 2017 that estimated it based on a number of areas where, if there are no child marriages, how girls will get opportunity to do various different things, and how the development would enhance, and how there will be savings in certain things, and then earnings on other fronts. So next, please. So looking at the COVID situation, by now we have 300 reported cases, I would say. We have reported cases of coronavirus, 313,431, and there has been 6,499 deaths. This may be a hugely underreported, but I can only base it on the reported. Pakistan actually started to respond very early, like the initial steps started in January 2020, when the border with Iran was closed in Balochistan, and Balochistan had put together a committee to work on this. But anyway, this has continued. Various measures had been taken. Then the lockdown started in March, and different provinces announced lockdown for a different period of time. Then in some places, lockdown ended and then restarted. Then there was smart lockdown and stuff like that continued. This whole issue of COVID-19, the fear of COVID-19, and this basically, the lockdown has resulted in low economic activity, especially hitting the daily wage laborers, small vendors, and whatever other small businesses, small shops. So economy overall actually got affected because many industry otherwise also, when they stopped manufacturing, people were laid off. Some people went on long leave, not paid fully, etc. All these things got affected. Inflation, especially food items, and food items prices were increased by 27% between March to June. So government had provided some cash and some food rations to people, but how long that can actually go on. Next, please.
Is it still not visible? Yes.
Still not visible.
I've shared it out from my side.
Yeah. Now this activity is interrupted. Education schools have been closed since the lockdown was announced. Then schools opened on 15th September but closed down again because corona cases were identified amongst children. Different provinces are taking measures. or for online classes. Some private schools are doing online classes. Government had started this through the television. They had started some classes. I don't know to what extent it worked, but there was this initiative taken by the government. COVID-19 and in terms of health situation, one infected many people, people had when the doctors and healthcare workers started to get infected, there was by May 7th, there were 500 Pakistani healthcare workers who got infected. And in a response, a number of maternity wards of various hospitals were closed down. I mean, okay, OP closed earlier, but then maternity wards were also closed down because some of the health workers got infected while attending to maternity. Pakistani health system already has challenge, but this had put Pakistani women at more risk. And services for adolescents on sexual reproductive health rights remained very limited. Because when one's health system gets affected, this is the first thing that does not remain a priority. Next, please. So, child early and forced marriages during COVID-19, Pakistan's economy, but economies worldwide, it presented a unique challenge in terms of like this kind of situation has never been faced. For the whole world, since this disease, this outbreak was a new thing. In the past, there has been pandemics and issues like that, but outbreaks of diseases. But this one was completely eroded the whole health system, the whole response mechanism and everything. Nobody knew how to handle it, but then people continued with that. So this is, but evidence from Ebola affected countries in the West Africa, that suggests that CEFM and early pregnancies increased in those West African countries who have faced Ebola. Because during Ebola also there was lockdown, there was minimum movement, a lot of precautions, SOPs involved. So this had happened there at that time. So maybe similar things might have happened during COVID-19 also. Evidence from humanitarian context shows that poor families who lose livelihoods are often more likely to marry their daughters to alleviate economic hardship. This may be higher in areas where the bride is paid. Maybe some people thinking of getting extra cash for the family. And there is already growing evidence that some of the measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19, including staying at home and physical distance, these can place girls and women at greater risk of domestic violence, sexual abuse, and GBV. For example, in France, this was reported that 8% during the lockdown. Although there is no specific study conducted in Pakistan on the effects of COVID-19 on CEFM in Pakistan, there is some anecdotal evidence that people are arranging marriages more than usual numbers due to convenience of not having to bear large. So this has come to a notice from various people reporting these. Pakistan, in normal circumstances, also a large number of marriages are generally not registered. But in COVID situation, there is also with limited mobility, there is this may exacerbate like more marriages not registered. So CFM in any case is usually unregistered, where the girl is, because Punjab provides 16 years as minimum age of marriage. So below 16, it's a crime, but or 16, 17, 18, it's not a crime. So those can be registered, but those are also not registered often. Children, young girls and boys being at home throughout, especially in joint families, there may be more risk of violence against children, sexual abuse or physical abuse generally. Children attending public schools where the teachers and students equally do not have access to online study classes may be more at risk of dropping out after the COVID. And parents not yet willing to send their children to school due to risk of COVID, but many are also not in a position to continue their children's education at home. Like wherever the parents themselves are not educated, or they are working hard to make ends meet, they may not have the time to actually in their learning. This does create an environment, especially for poor households where they have lost their livelihoods or have meager income. Since the priorities of law enforcement agencies had also low SOPs, there may not be enough monitoring to arrest the CEFM. To the COVID crisis, with limited mobility leading to lack on continuous efforts to end CEFM. Next, please. So what can be done in this particular situation? I think we need to find some innovative ways of continuity of education, especially where children and young people do not have access to online learning. Although the government is saying that, they will, the schools are making three groups of children, and on each one of the days, there will only be 1/3 children going to the school. I don't know whether, to what extent, to what degree this will be manageable, because I even with now the number of reported cases lowering, I see that people are not careful at all about observing the SOPs. If all these educated people, adults, are not careful about observing SOPs, what can we expect from children how can we expect from children to meet all those SOPs and then be safe in a situation where a number of children get together and their teachers and then protection due to limited mobility. Parents and caregivers need to be more watchful of not being faced with a situation of risk of violence. In certain cases, parents themselves are whatever reason, but some people want to so they can resort to corporal punishment or any other forcing children to do certain things. Ensuring services of any domestic sexual or other forms of violence survivors. Difficult in recent times to actually get adequate services. Although for people who have online access, they could find also doctors for, but people who do not have online access, for them, it has been very difficult. Health facilities and their access, again, we need to find innovative ways of ensuring that services are available. CSOs need to continue their COVID response to address the issue of CEFM. Or even if it I could for some time. I'm back. So, most importantly, encouraging people to observe SOPs to bring back their life to normal is very, very important. And we all need to do our effort in order to continue to enforce these measures, in order to continue the work on whatever issues are close to our heart and whatever issues are important for the society that we want to work on. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Bushra. Next, please. We do have a session where we will take questions. So if people can either write down their questions in the chat, or they note it for themselves and then later they can ask. Mr. Senel Wanniarachchi, as I had mentioned, he is the co-founder and director of Hashtage Generation Sri Lanka. And this is a group led by young tech-savvy people working towards building a society where everyone has the skills, information, and tools to be active participant in making the decisions that affect their communities, technologies, and bodies. In 2017, he received a medal from Queen Elizabeth II in recognition of his work. In 2014, he was nominated as Sri Lanka's official youth delegate to the United Nations. He was also a member of the Sri Lanka Youth Parliament. Mr. Senel also sits on the board of the Innovation for Change South Asia Hub, which is a collective of organizations and human rights defenders working together to preserve the civic space in South Asia. He is the co-author of a book titled Montage of Sexuality in Sri Lanka, in which was published by the UN Population Fund. Senel holds an MSc in Human Rights from London School of Economics and Political Science, which he followed on a Chevening Scholarship. A very warm welcome, Senel Wanniarachchi. Please, over to Bushra for displaying the presentation.
No, I don't have any slides.
Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, as I said, I don't have any slides. I thought I can share some experiences and anecdotes based on what the previous speaker said as well. And before that, I just want to say that listening to the two previous speakers, it was also quite clear that we have so much in common in terms of the context we all live in the region. Because some of the things that the other speakers said could well have been anecdotes from Sri Lanka as well. I think it says a lot about, even though some of the kind of the specific laws and the data and so on might be different, we have so much in common in terms of the challenges we face and the attitudes and behavior that we're looking to change in the region as well. So the information that I am going to share a little bit is based out of a study that I worked on for the Men Engage Alliance in Sri Lanka on child early and forced marriages in Sri Lanka. And it's also based a little bit on some personal experience as well, working on these issues. So in terms of the data about the prevalence and the incidence of child early and forced marriages, in compared to the other countries in the region, Sri Lanka is actually doing a little bit better in terms of the prevalence. Of course, even kind of a single marriage, a child marriage, a child given in marriage kind of without their consent is still problematic. But in terms of kind of in a relative framework, we are doing better than some of the other countries. So some of the latest data available is from 2014, where it says that there were about 16,000 to 24,000 children that got married in the country. So when I say marriage, of course, I mean in a social sense, because not all children are able to get married legally, except for the Muslim girl child in the country, where there are provisions for minors to get married to. I will come to that in a little bit. But when I talk of marriage, and as the other speakers did as well, I'm talking more on a social sense, where it also encompasses things like cohabitation, where two people kind of live in the same household and try and live in a unit which resembles kind of the family and so on. So even though Sri Lanka is doing better in terms of the prevalence and also in terms of the teenage pregnancy data as well, it's currently at around 4.6%, which is also been decreasing over the years. There are some significant challenges, which is what I'd like to highlight in the next few minutes. In terms of legal reform, two, in terms of kind of attitudes and stigma around these issues, and also in terms of particular pockets of people that have been left behind from these improvements in the data. These issues, of course, I'm talking about them as separate issues, but they're very interconnected and dependent on each other. For example, the laws also are dependent on the stigma and so on, and the stigma is also dependent on the fact that some people are left behind as well. So to start on the laws, the legal age for consent in Sri Lanka is 16. However, the age of kind of capacity to marry, so kind of the age of someone to be able to consent to marriage is 18, according to the general marriage law. I will come to the more specific community laws or the personal laws in a little bit, but the general age for marriage is 18. Now, this has given a bit of a conundrum where young people can legally consent to sex at 16, but they can only consent to marriage at 18 years in a context where there is kind of there is no access to legal and safe abortions, and also where there is a very little comprehensive sexuality education that's provided in schools, as well as there is stigma around contraceptives and accessing contraceptives. This has created a bit of an issue. So these are some of the challenges in terms of kind of attitudes that need to be changed as well. Another legal challenge is the fact that there is a general marriage law which says that the age of consent for marriage is 18, but there are also personal laws, which is there's two that apply to this context. One is the Canadian Marriage and Divorce Act, and the other is the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act. So the General Marriage Registrations Ordinance and the Canadian Marriage Registrations Ordinance, both of these say that the age of marriage or the age of consent to marriage is 18. But with the MMDA, which is the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act, there is actually no age of consent specified. What it only says is that someone younger than 12 years of age, you need permission from a Qazi judge, which is a judge in a kind of religious court, and you need their consent to be able to go ahead with that marriage. There is also no need to register marriages as per the MMDA. So the data that's available at the moment, it might also be not be a reflection of the actual number of marriages that have taken place under this. So there is a clear violation of kind of the rights of the Muslim girl child, because the rest of the marriage legislation does not allow for marriage for girls from other ethnic groups and religious groups and so on. But with particularly with the Muslim girl child, there is a special law that allows for her rights to be discriminated. So there have been calls for reform for this law and for a general law at 18 years. And that's something that activists and feminist groups and so on working in this field have been treading quite carefully, especially because there's also racism in the country, especially around the Muslim community. And some of the groups that have been calling for reform have actually been these racist groups as well. So while there are concerns, while there have been groups, the Muslim women's groups and so on that have been calling for reform, some of these racist groups have also appropriated these demands and use it for their own kind of political benefits and so on. So what's important is that the voices of these Muslim women's groups and the feminist groups also need to be amplified over these other groups. At the moment in Parliament, there is a bill calling for reform and calling for a general age of marriage is 18, which will amend the law, but it has been brought forward by a young parliamentarian, and a lot of these Muslim women's groups and so on have also welcomed this law. So we are looking to see how that process will unfold as well. Now, besides those legal challenges, there is also, like the other speaker said, so much kind of stigma around sex and sexuality. And often marriage is seen as the only path and only kind of socially sanctioned and acceptable way for young people to explore their sexuality and have sex. So some young people then actually feel the need to kind of to meet other young people, but also like do things that we call runaways and eloping, only because that's the only acceptable and sanctioned way of exploring their sexuality. What also happens in these situations is that when things like this happen and the parents and the family find out, then of course they also pressure these young people to get married, almost as a way of correcting this terrible thing that has happened and kind of remedying this situation. So these attitudes are also things that we need to talk more about and work towards changing, because in a lot of communities, these attitudes also push people towards especially young girls, but also boys, towards getting married early and sometimes as children as well. Now, so far, the things that I've shared have been within like a heteronormative framework, which means I've spoken predominantly about laws that apply to heterosexual people. That's because the laws that apply to people who are not heterosexual are actually mostly laws that criminalize this behavior. So there are colonial laws in the country that actually criminalize same-sex sexual conduct. The laws don't specifically refer to same-sex behavior. They just use vague terms like gross indecency and sex against the order of the nature and very vague terms, but they have been interpreted by the state and often the police to target LGBT plus people. So this has also led to the prevalence of forced marriage around LGBT plus people, because often family members and so on pressure these young people to get married and often say that they bring shame on their family and so on, and often pressure these young people a lot to get married. And therefore, this is also quite common within this group. There are also very bad practices like what's called conversion therapy, which is basically not therapeutic practices at all, but just to use the term that's kind of used, they're mostly either kind of pseudo medical practices or religious and cultural practices that attempt to change people's sexuality. And a lot of these actually result in damaging people's mental health quite a lot. There's also quite alarming things like what's also being termed as corrective rape, where kind of homosexual people are forced to have sex with someone of the opposite sex in an attempt to almost change their sexuality. Again, these can be quite damaging to people's not just mental health, but also their physical health as well. So coming to COVID, in this particular context, of course, as the other speaker said as well, a lot of these things have intensified in some ways, because especially in the cities, a lot of people have been, some people that live on rent and so on, have been asked to leave these places where they stay on rent by the landowners and so on. And a lot of these people who are living alone, especially LGBT plus people and so on, who live away from their parents because sometimes a home is not safe, and homes can be a toxic environment for them, have been forced to go back to living at home with their families and so on. And within this context, a lot of them also there's anecdotal evidence that some of them experience forced marriage. And also especially because some of them have also lost jobs and have had salary cuts and pay cuts, and also within their families as well. So as the other speakers said, sometimes marriage is seen as a route for economic stability as well. So when the family can't afford to pay rent and so on, the young people are pushed forward to get married as well. And I think the school closures as well, which resulted from the pandemic, have had some impact where young people are now increasingly at home, which puts them at bigger risk of violence and abuse and so on, and also in turn of early marriage as well. And because of the lockdown situation and curfews and things like that have been imposed, it's also increasingly difficult for people to access the police and the justice system and service providers, including medical service providers, and ask for help and seek justice. So those are some of the things that I wanted to highlight, but kind of bringing the discussion also back to masculinity, which is something that we're talking about today as well. I think, as the other speakers said, a thread that continues across child and forced marriages are also ideas of masculinity and femininity, especially ideas of masculinity around how one should be a man and what it means to be a man and kind of masculine and manly. Often male sexual conduct is celebrated and seen as kind of normal. There are phrases in kind of local languages that normalize and sometimes even celebrate male sexual conduct. Like the English phrase, boys will be boys. There are local versions of that as well. But a young girl or a woman having sex in a premarital context is almost seen as not respectable, and then therefore she is unsuitable for marriage and almost like damaged in a sense, which is terrible. And these attitudes are in the long term things that we need to fix and change as well. I think that's all really that I wanted to share today. I hope some of that was interesting for some of you, and thank you for this opportunity to share some of this with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senel. Thank you very much. Very interesting talk. And yeah, it shows the diversity and how the countries are trying to balance legally various different religious groups, and it's very interesting to hear this. Now we have a session for question answers, but before we go to question answers, Bushra, would you be sharing the timings of each one of the activities that are happening from, like, for example, today this is a webinar, and then you have talk shows, and then the next webinar. So can you please share the complete timings of each and everything on the email with all the participants who have joined this, so that it's not difficult for people to actually, because this doesn't give this only gives the duration and the date. People would like to know the time as well, and it would be good if you can share this on the email with all the participants who are attending this.
Great, thank you, Farah, for mentioning that. I would request everyone to drop their email addresses. So we do have most of your email addresses, but just to make sure that we don't miss out, to share this information with you. please share your email addresses in the chat box. And stay tuned to like
And
Shirakat's
some
Facebook
people
page.
are sharing, some people are, sorry, Bushra, some people are sharing their email addresses in the chat box. Please ask someone to note those so that you have all this information available.
Okay, great. I'll be copying the chat towards the end of it.
Okay.
Right, and we'll send it. Thank you.
Okay, so now the floor is open for questions. Bushra, if you have noted any questions from the chat box, because I had dropped out, so that's why I don't have the full chat now.
Okay.
No worries, no worries. It's okay. Shazia is here, was looking at you.
Yeah. So, Farah, I have found only one question so far from NACG, and Ms. Mavish Kayani is asking from all the panelists and Shirakat, like, what is the way forward after all this discussion? Have we developed any regional strategy to end CEFM? And Ms. Mavish is saying like they are the South Asian, they are member of the South Asian Initiative to End Violence Against Women, and which is a SAC body, and they have the NACG as well, which is a coordination group for the regional action plan to end child marriages in South Asia. So she is asking if there is any regional strategy to curb violence against women and end child marriages. So so far only one question that I have noted down from the participants. So we will be welcoming 2 or 3 questions. If somebody wants to ask directly from the panelists, they can raise your hands, and we can include your questions in the session. Thank you.
Okay, if no more questions, I can respond to this, the CIVAC related question that people have asked. Yes, CIVAC, we know that CIVAC is South Asian Initiative on Ending Violence Against Children, and CIVAC had a 5-year plan, and then later on the revised plan. And obviously, Government of Pakistan was also required to work on aspects of aligning the legislation with UNCRC. And so some work has been done in Pakistan, but not to the fullest extent. And so similarly, Men Engage Alliance had a plan where South Asia had decided to work on the CEFM. So in South Asia, as I had mentioned, there are 5 countries, and the members of Men Engage Alliance who voluntarily wanted to get involved in that planning and implementation, those have been involved in conducting various activities around CEFM. This obviously, this plan was prepared at the regional level, and then all countries contributed to that. And this conference is also part of that overall plan, that this will now, since nobody had predicted COVID, so we then had to adapt and say that now we need to actually get more evidence what is happening now, and then include those aspects also, because we cannot just wait for a time to come when we will be able to intervene. So we actually wanted to continue so that at least we keep discussing the issue and keep then gathering information from other people who are now part of the webinar. So if anybody wants to add anything, want to share something, they're most welcome to share that as well. And Archana, I would like to invite you, if you have something else to add to this, please feel free to do so.
Yeah. So uh, I uh, I don't know. I can share one last slide, but more than that, I was thinking. I think if I also try to respond to this question of strategy at the South Asia level, and I mean, I know there are strategies and there are so many plans that are happening, not just at the South Asia level, but there are this whole global campaign and global things also happening. But my sense is, and I am basing all of my experience, in the context of India, that while there is so much similarity in the cultural and gendered norms of the societies that we live, like what Senel was saying when he was speaking, it was almost like he was speaking for all of us. And yet we need to have very specific strategies for each country, for each community. I still feel we can think in broad strokes in terms of strategies at South Asia level or even Asia Pacific level. But when it comes to breaking down those strategies, I think it will mean very, very specific plan of action and strategies for each country, because I think it is not just about the issue, it is also about the laws of the country, the cultural mores and norms, and how people relate with those. I mean, like uh, Sanil was saying, Sri Lanka faces the idea of early and child marriage in a very different way than maybe what Nepal might be seeing, and maybe different for India. So I mean, this is my personal view that each country will have to have its own strategies of developing it. In terms of other recommendations that I wanted to share, and and this is again based on the work that we have been doing with, and really thank you, Faraji, for actually raising very broad issues around gender, especially in context of COVID-19, that how it has actually impacted so many things, including violence and education, etc. And and similarly, we are seeing in India also that a lot of time our work with young people, is impacted by the way we understand this work in our own context, in the language that development sector uses, or the kind of strategies that we think will work, but we are not talking enough with young people about what they want. I think a lot of discourse is driven by the adults' idea of what is good for young people. So, how do we actually bring young people as part of the strategy development process, and with very mindfulness of the fact that when we say young people, it doesn't mean young people are also sorted in their life and they don't have any gender biases or sexuality based biases and discriminations, etc. When we bring young people and their thoughts and ideas into the brainstorming and strategy devising processes with capacity building processes, so that they also engage with these issues like masculinity, when we are talking with boys, they come with their own understanding of what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a modern boy of today, what they want. So how do we engage with young people from the issues of gender and sexuality, but at the same time give them also the center stage to express what they desire, and rather than us always deciding, us in the sense I'm putting myself into that adult category, that what is good for them. I think that is somewhere needs to be I don't know, broken down, or more space needs to be created for their voices to come and start making difference to the way development is even thought of, uh, um, or planned. But at the same time, we also need to engage with them with all of these issues and really challenge them on these ideas, and not just the fact that they are young people, they are young, so they have figured out everything. I don't know if I'm making sense, but in case I'm just going round and round, please clarify or ask me. But that is how I feel something very fundamentally need to change the way we work with young people, about young people, with them, about them, and uh, how do we actually keep the perspective alive. I mean, it is not just about working with them or for them, but actually working from their perspective. So for example, we don't see age as an excess of power. We and how certain ages are also vulnerable to the power, and how ageism sort of works, and what kind of powerlessness it renders to young people. And if we start looking at these issues in that manner, I think we will be able to understand the vulnerabilities of young people as well, in certain ways, as they play out in the society.
Thank you, Archana. This is very useful. I appreciate your point of view that we need to work from the perspective of young people, so that it is with them, for them, and obviously these are their rights, and their voice should come first. Fine. Thank you very much. The question on NSCG and NSCG has asked a follow-up question, that can we collaborate with them? Sure. Men Engage Alliance, Shirakat, we are all open to collaboration as long as we can work together and add value to the issue. We will be very happy to do that.
And also, I'm also a co-chair of the NSCG, so NSCG is already involved.
Sure.
So it's not just a matter of
I know. Yes. And I know NSCG. I have worked with Plan International for 7 years. I have been actively involved in supporting NCCWD and NSCG and the action plans and everything. So I know how it works. So please, NSCG also needs to start more broader collaboration with others. There are other networks also, I'm sure you are aware. So, but at least just for the time being, I can give you this information that Men Engage Alliance does have a South Asia level plan, in which where South Asia, out of the all the countries, South Asian countries had selected this issue of child early and forced marriages to work on. So this has been, we have been working on that. So there is Shiraz Hasnat Sahab had asked that number of cases, and on daily basis, data available. Shiraz Sahab, I'm sorry, there hasn't been any systematic research done. And as was already pointed out, that mostly the child marriages are not registered. Even the adult marriages are, the rate of registration is very low. So when the marriages are not registered, you cannot even go to Nadra and ask them to take out the information about how many marriages were registered during this time and this time, on daily basis, how many marriages registered, etc., etc. So they would only have, if we go to them, they will only have the data for marriages that are registered with them, which is only probably a small percentage, I think 34% or something, 43%, something like that. These marriages are registered, not all marriages are registered. And there hasn't been any systematic study done on this, which will show you that during lockdown from March to September, how many marriages happened. It's only anecdotal evidence from some newspaper reports, from some reports coming from the grassroots organizations from the field, informally, which can show us that, there is a possibility. And we are not saying that, this has actually happened. We are saying that in any crisis situation, this happens, that the child marriages increase. So this is what we are saying. At least I'm not saying that, this definitely increased, but I just mentioned that people were of the view that since now there is a lockdown, you don't have to invite so many people, so the expense would be less. So, and it's also the fact that, okay, now what do we do? There is no job, there is no work, no earning. So better, that the girls are married and they go to their homes, and it's no longer parents' responsibility. It is very harsh to say that, but then, this actually, when it's the people who face that level of poverty may not have any choice. So we can't say anything in terms of that. Sadia Ambreen has asked that, is child marriage legal? In Punjab, although there is a Child Marriages Restraint Act 1929 in Pakistan, and I think same laws are applicable in various other countries of South Asia also. In Pakistan, this law from 2013 onwards, there was a lot of debate, and this law was, there was an amendment passed by Sindh province, and they had increased the child marriage, they had increased the minimum age of marriage for girls and boys. Boys was already 18, so they increased the girls' age of marriage to 18 as well. Punjab did not change the age of marriage for girl, that remains 16 years, but they changed the level of punishments. If somebody marries a girl less than the age of 16, then the punishments were stronger and some fines were increased. But in that particular sense, you can still say, if we define according to UNCRC, which is signed by our state, if we strictly go with that definition of child, yes, the child marriage is still legal in Punjab, in, I think, Gilgit-Baltistan, and probably Balochistan as well. Yeah, and any other question? Intensive to interfere with other countries' religious and cultural tradition around child marriage. Sadia, this is religion, is a very, very sensitive subject. And it means that if you touch anything that people think their religion allows, and somebody else wants to curtail that, of course there will be unrest. So obviously it is it's a very sensitive issue. That is why perhaps if Sri Lanka has allowed Muslims to do the child marriages, but with some restraint in terms of Qazi deciding that whether or not this marriage can be allowed. I think they have put some restrictions, but they have not put complete restriction on that, because you know that in Pakistan also, Council of Islamic Ideology says that putting a restriction on the age of marriage is un-Islamic. So, yeah. So you can understand.
Can I also add?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question, and I think this is also an eternal question that keeps coming back to women's organizations, especially because most of the norms and traditions are geared towards controlling women, their bodies, their sexuality, their choices. So there is always a lot of this thing, but it is always a double-edged sword to walk, that when human rights become more important than your cultural and traditional rights. So this war, I guess, keeps on coming back again and again. This especially comes when we talk about women's rights, because women's rights are always in contradiction with the cultural and traditional rights that societies have, and they think it is their right to practice religion, to practice culture and traditions in certain ways. And if legal system is coming in its way by giving rights to women, it kind of is taking away their right. But I think when we say cultural and religious traditional rights, then whose rights are we talking about? Aren't women part of that same religion, culture, tradition? And if they themselves feel that these human rights or the legal rights are important for them and they should be getting, then whose religious and traditional rights are we then violating? I mean, I think even when we ask this question, somewhere our gaze is the men in the society who are the holders of these religious and cultural traditions. But like Farah is saying, this is a very, very sensitive issue. But I guess, I mean, our own struggle of last 70 years, I'm not saying just India, but South Asia level, I think feminist women's organizations have fought for women's rights, and this has been a constant issue of conflict between the state, society, and people fighting for women's human rights.
Okay. Okay, thank you. There is another question. Does the Islamic Ideology Council, Council of Pakistan, approve the age set for marriage by Sindh and Punjab? If no, then what is the implication for these marriage acts? Actually, this is now Khadija Khan. This goes to the devolution of powers to the provinces, and when the powers were dissolved to the provinces, the legislation on certain matters also became provincial subject. So these provinces could change the law for their own province. And they did not go to Council of Islamic Ideology for getting their their opinion. The only law that went to Council of Islamic Ideology was that for the ICT, Islamabad Capital Territory, and on the basis of that, the Islamic Ideology Council declined that. And they said that you cannot interfere with You cannot set any restriction on the age of marriage. It is un-Islamic. Implications for the provinces are none. However, this Gilgit-Baltistan region, which is administered from the federal, when their legislative council, when they wanted to pass the law, that had to come to Islamabad, to the National Assembly for final approval. And that was not approved. That I do remember that it was not approved. So that is why Gilgit-Baltistan does not have not made any changes in the legislation so far. Next question is related to teen pregnancy, and what does teen pregnancy have to do with child marriage? Obviously, when an early marriage happens, obviously after the wedding, if the marriage is consumed, there are huge chances of the teenage girl getting pregnant. So that is, in a way, as was explained by Archana ji as well, that in our countries in South Asia, officially from the formal aspects, the sex life only starts with marriage. At least, acknowledging of that starts with marriage. So any pregnancies, teen pregnancies that are happening outside of the marriage, nobody will even acknowledge those. Although, if you know, as an activist, I have worked in Lahore and Islamabad and several other parts of the country. I have seen there are backstreet clinics that perform abortions, and they charge quite a high fee because these are illegal clinics, and they help people abort illegal pregnancies. Illegal, I would say, because since sex outside marriage is illegal, so then those pregnancies obviously become illegal and have to be aborted because it will have implications for the girls. So that also, this is what I can say about teen pregnancies. So maybe now I think it's time for Bushra to, if there are no other questions, then I'll ask Bushra to show us the animation on GBV.
खुशहाल घराने से ताल्लुक रखने वाली 3 भाइयों की शरारती सी बहन, माँ की लाडली और बाबा की दुलारी। मगर मेरे बचपन का सबसे पहला झटका मुझे उस वक्त लगा जब मुझे ये एहसास दिलाया गया कि मेरे पास तो अपने मज़ामीन चुनने का बुनियादी हक भी नहीं है। ख्वाब से जाना तो बहुत दूर की मंजिल है। अम्मी बोली, 2 जमातें और पढ़ो तो कोई अच्छा सा बर देखकर तुम्हारे हाथ पीले कर दें। भाई खुशनसीब होगा जो हमारी नाजों से पली शहजादी को अपने घर की रानी बनाकर ले जाएगा। बड़े भाई ने नुक्ता देते हुए कहा तो सारा घर खिलखिला उठा। मैं ये सब सुनकर बनावटी सी मुस्कुराहट से मुस्कुराई, मगर अपनी आंखों में सजे ख्वाबों को हसरत बनाकर बाबा की तरफ देखा। बाबा भी क्या करते, जिंदगी का बोझ उठाते उठाते बूढ़े हो चुके थे। घर में अब भाई का राज था और बाकी सब उसके हम आवाज। खामोशी से 2 साल गुजरे। मैट्रिक के इम्तिहान में पूरे इलाके में अव्वल आई तो दिल में खुशी थी कि आज तो घर वालों के लिए भी सरप्राइज होगा। मेरा ये कारनामा सुनकर बड़े भाई अपने फैसले पर जरूर शर्मिंदा होंगे और तो और हर तरफ से तारीफों के फूल बरसेंगे। दादो तहसीन के शोर में एक जश्न मनाया जाएगा। घर पहुंचने पर मालूम हुआ कि मेरी कामयाबी की खबर तो मुझसे पहले ही घर की दहलीज पार कर चुकी थी। मेरे दमकते हुए चेहरे पर उस वक्त उदासी दौड़ गई जब भाई ने इंतहाई करख्त लहजे में कहा, आ गई तुम कारनामा करके, सारे मोहल्ले को तुम्हारा नाम पता चल गया है। मुझसे 3 साल छोटे भाई ने भी जल्दी पर तेल डालते हुए कहा, और पढ़ाओ इसे। स्कूल के सदर दरवाजे पर तुम्हारा नाम देखकर इलाके के कमी कमीन भी हमारी बेटी का नाम लेकर बातें कर रहे हैं। चाचू अपने सख्त लहजे में बोले, अब ये लड़की घर से ना निकले, मुनासिब रिश्ता देखकर इसको रुखसत करें। भाई ने फैसला सादिर कर दिया। मुझ पर तो बिजली आन गिरी। सब ख्वाब किरची किरची होकर आंखों के सामने बिखरते नजर आए। हसरत भरी आंखों से बाबा को देखा तो अब की बार बाबा ने मेरी आंखों को पढ़कर मेरे ख्वाबों को जिंदा रखने का फैसला कर लिया। जब बाबा ने अपनी रौबदार आवाज में सबको खामोश रहने का हुक्म दिया तो मुझे एहसास हुआ कि बाबा बूढ़े जरूर हो गए हैं मगर कमजोर नहीं। मेरी बेटी ने मेरा सर फख्र से बुलंद किया है। अल्लाह ऐसी बेटियां सबको दे। मेरी बेटी डॉक्टर बनके अपने ख्वाब जरूर पूरे करेगी। बाबा ने फैसला सुना दिया। मगर भाईजान, चाचू बोले तो बाबा ने उन्हें सख्ती से डांट दिया। मैंने तो पहले ही कहा था कि अब्बा बूढ़े होकर सठिया गए हैं। उस दिन के बाद मेरे बाबा ने क्या क्या नहीं सहा। बेटों की मुखालिफत, खानदान वालों के ताने और बरादरी की बातें, यहाँ तक कि कल तक उनको बड़ा मानने वालों ने भी आज उनसे ताल्लुक तोड़ दिया। ये फैसला उनकी जिंदगी का मुश्किल फैसला साबित हुआ मगर वो डटे रहे। वक्त गुजरता गया। आखिरकार कॉन्वोकेशन के दिन बाबा मेरे साथ हॉल में पहुंचे। मुझे कॉन्वोकेशन के गाउन में देखकर उनकी आंखें बरस पड़ी। उनकी आंखों से आंसू बह रहे थे और मैं उनके आंसुओं में अपने ख्वाबों का अक्स देख रही थी। फिर वो लम्हा आ पहुंचा जब गोल्ड मेडल देने के लिए मेरा नाम पुकारा गया तो पूरा हॉल तालियों से गूंज उठा। मगर उस शोर में मुझे सिर्फ उन 2 हाथों की आवाज सुनाई दे रही थी जो मुझे थामकर मुझे मेरी मंजिल तक ले आए थे। मेरे बाबा मेरे हीरो हैं। क्या आप अपनी बेटी के हीरो हैं?
Thank you, Bushra.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much, Farah. And I would like to thank actually Miss Archana, Mr. Senel, and Miss Farah for their wonderful talk today. And it was such an overwhelming and a very, very thought-provoking discussion that we had with all the very distinguished speakers and also the participants. They have asked pertinent questions according to the session today. I am indebted and I'm so thankful on behalf of Shirakat Partnership for Development. I would also like to thank Miss Bushra. She's a very, very intelligent, very hardworking team member, Ms. Bushra Aslam, Mr. Isa and Ms. Salma. They all have put together their efforts to make this a huge success in the form of this successful webinar that we have conducted just now. And we will be looking forward for your reviews, for your feedback on the TV talk shows as well, because they are going to be aired from tomorrow, and we will be posting them on Shirakat's website, Shirakat's social media pages. So please visit Shirakat's Facebook pages, YouTube and Hum TV channel tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. And this will be the first program in the series of these sessions of the conference. Thank you very much, Dr. Naeem Zafar Saab. Thank you very much, Dr. Tufail. Thank you very much, Ms. Khadija Khan and Rashid Sahab and many others who have not, who were not able to join today. But they all have put together their efforts to make this conference very, very enlightening, very enriching, very thought-provoking for all of us. And this has proven that, I mean, no challenge can hinder the good work that can happen anywhere, anytime, with any disruption, with any problem. Every challenge comes with an opportunity, and this COVID-19, we did not take this as a challenge, but we looked at the opportunity that COVID-19 has given us. Thank you so very much, everybody. Stay tuned, stay with us, and keep visiting Shirakat's Facebook page and website for the upcoming webinar and the TV talk shows. Thank you very much. Khuda Hafiz and good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.